All right. Hey, welcome back to the Go for CO channel. Now, hey, by the way, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Subscriber. Too many of you are leaving this great channel and listening to phenomenal guests, but not subscribing. So, hey, what if launching a nonprofit wasn't a 6 month headache, but a 10-day blueprint? Today's guest, Christian from Instant Nonprofit, reveals how founders are turning mission into movement faster than ever. Christian, thank you so much for being on the Go for CO channel. How are you?
I'm excited to be here. I'm fantastic. And yeah, let's get right into it. I've looked at some of your previous guests, and I'm just so impressed with what you've built here.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Well, there's a passion to this. I've always been a business guy. I say it in my book that at around 7 or 8 years old, my mom brought me back to Colombia, where my mom was from, and I got to see my uncle and just the way that he moved, his aura, his presence. He had 6 kids. I was an only child from my mom's side, his sister, and I just saw the uniqueness of business and ownership and that type of strength behind it. And I know we talked a little bit offline that there's some light that has come out of you over some experiences that you've had in your life. So I'm super excited to have that. But let's start with ideation. Instant nonprofit and some of the things that came about of how you started this business. We always like to hear kind of the backstory, and then we'll get into every level of business that we talk about today. So take it away.
Yeah, there were probably a couple of formative moments. First of all, my sister is developmentally disabled, right? She appeared to be like all the other kids, but nonverbal at almost 4 years old. We learned from, taking her to doctors and stuff that she just wasn't going to develop like the other kids. And I didn't have any, she was my only sibling. I didn't have anyone else to compare her to. So she's fine with me. And um, she's still one of the best humans I've ever met, if not the best. He just me how to be really present and authentic. When she is excited to see you, you get a big hug and a big smile. And when it's time to go and she's tired, she kind of turns your shoulder toward the door and says bye. And don't we wish we had that level of authenticity from all our relationships?
Yeah.
Um, so that's sort of what made me, partly made me who I am, and sort of somebody who believes in fighting for the underdog and lifting up people who maybe need a hand or want to experience life at its best. And much later, I not sure how I got into that, but I was a history political science major at Rutgers University in New Jersey, and I kept, I had to make several goes at college, and I started getting into Eastern Europe and the fall of Eastern Europe, which was pretty fresh in everyone's minds, early '90s. And I did a paper on the NGOs, right, the nonprofits that came around the millions of people who suddenly had a loss of government services with the collapse of the Soviet Union and all the satellite nations. And nonprofits weren't really talked about as much as a study, right? And so all these nonprofits came around, these millions and millions of people who just were abjectly bereft of services, and really built society to support people in the wake of the fall of the Iron Curtain. And I was just so fascinated with that. The paper was only supposed to be 15 pages. I wrote a 42 pager, and my professor gave it to a doctoral student from there to take further. And I was just so blown away that people have these sort of voluntary ways to get together and make things better, right? Outside of government. That's why they call them in Europe non-governmental organizations. Here it's nonprofit. But that was really an eye opener for me. And years later, I ended up here by just trying to start a nonprofit with some friends and absolutely becoming morally outraged at how difficult it is if you want to do good in the world versus start any other type of business. And so I said, somebody has to do something about this. And several thousand nonprofits later, here we are.
It's super exciting. I mean, obviously, the media can share, some bad takes, some good takes of NGOs and some of the things that have happened over the last, decade or so. But it's really interesting to have someone that's kind of planted and placed in a service-based scenario, right? And the mindset that you have. And I loved our conversation offline as well. So okay. You go through university, you kind of went right to instant nonprofit. Was that something that right into your 20s you started right
Oh,
away or
no.
okay. All right, so
No,
let's
no. This was university. Yeah, I graduated as an older student. I don't know if I was 34 or something. And then I was an advocate for liberty. I believe that the founding principles of this nation are why it's been so successful. And so I worked in a nonprofit. I didn't even know it was a nonprofit when I started working there. I worked in a nonprofit to advance those ideals and kind of, discuss these things in the public square. And completely unrelated, I went to start a nonprofit with some friends, and that was probably in 2010, right? So 10 years later. And I remember calling the IRS, and you could almost hear the chuckling in the back room, like, oh, don't worry. This is going to take a year to approve, they told me. And you've got plenty of time to do other things. And I was like, what do you mean it takes a year to get some paperwork through? Like, I've incorporated a company before. Many people have done an LLC. It's no big deal. You can do it online. And the more I looked into this, I just remember being sort of up that night, really bothered by the idea that people who want to do a good thing would have to crawl across broken glass, possibly be denied, rejected, and then wait a year, even if they did everything right. And so the next day I decided to try a little strategy, and I took the form letter, the phone number off the form letter for my agent, who was never available when I wanted them, of course. And I changed the last couple of numbers on that extension, knowing I'd probably get somebody in the IRS exempt organizations department. And if I'd get somebody to pick up, I'd beg, plead, I'd try to bribe them with chocolates, whatever, to get them to tell me, why does this take so long? What does a perfect file look like? And if what would make them feel cared about? What would make them feel in their bureaucratic, probably pretty difficult job where they have a lot of files on their desk with too much of this and not enough of that? What would make them feel like somebody cared about their job? And I curated something I called a love letter to a bureaucrat. What if Selma Hayek was an IRS agent and I wanted her to go swing in a hammock forever with me in Fiji? What kind of file would I send her? It would be beautiful. It would have table of contents, watermarked EIN, and all these special little features that would make their job 10 times easier. Because what does every bureaucrat want to do? What does anyone who works at a desk want to do? They want one less file on their desk, and they want to be able to punch out to lunch a little early with another checkbox in front of the boss that they got something good done that day. So I sent in my file after, get talking to about 20 or 30 people. I called probably 50 extensions. And lo and behold, I got a 35-day or so approval in the face of a normal 1 year, and a light bulb went on for me. How many other people, like the folks that started Special Olympics way back when, have gone through this murderous process to get this done? And I tried it for another group in town who were starting a little private school for in a rural area for kids. My kids actually ended up going there, and the challenge was get that thing approved before the billionaire donor who was going to match funds. His requirement was that we had kids register that school year, 8 weeks out, 7 weeks out, something like that. Well, I did it, and I did it in 6 weeks after some really late sleepless nights, wondering if I was going to be successful. And once that happened, it was on. I was like, this is something that really could help people. What if we could have people not focused on paperwork, but focused on world changing missions?
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. I'm actually very enlightened, right? I didn't really realize that there was such a problem in a nonprofit when, like you said, yeah, I mean, a simple LLC or a corporation, I mean, there's enough Instagram ads and stuff like that, of how to Zen business your business, right?
Right, right, right.
So all that type of stuff. So it's really interesting. I didn't realize that the complexity, which obviously, if you take a step back, most government things unfortunately do take a long time. But that angle of it, of rewarding that human being, of the feeling of being able to be a part of it and kind of engaging them, is really interesting angle of it. So, all right, so you start one and you help this nonprofit school start it. So now you have this side business idea. What does that really look like? And were you working a job? Was this kind of like a part-time thing, or did you initiate the business just from that, those two experiences, or what was that like for you?
Well, yeah, I thought I had something that might be worthwhile, and I probably did, three or four for local. People heard I could get this done, and so I volunteered for a couple, and then I created a little website and ended up with a customer or two, and I was like, okay, this is this is all, and like lean startup was big then, right? The idea that you just, and growing up sort of lower middle class in New Jersey, in North Jersey, um, I was the kid who would go sell a bunch of lawn mowing services in the neighborhood to make some money. And then I would go figure out how to borrow Joey's grandmother's lawnmower and get the lawns done, right? And so you kind of have this scrappiness, right? If you're not handed everything. And so, this was really a bootstrapped thing, but I was so proud of my little uh, secret sauce, right? My little love letter to a bureaucrat, that I really put extra love and care into that thing on every one at the beginning. And, that's how a lean business starts up, right? You actually do the thing, you learn maybe what comes back. You get feedback from the marketplace, right? You get feedback from how successful is your product. And so I started writing about these things and blogging about them. And then I had a job that I had some flexibility at that time, but I knew that that was coming, was going to be coming to an end. So I came to Colorado, and I lived in Colorado for quite some time, and then lived in Montana for a few years. But I would fly to Colorado and go to this startup accelerator called Galvanize, which that was before Shark Tank Nation existed, right? That was like one of the pioneering shared workspaces. And I got to do a pitch day. It's like called Google Demo Day, and there were like hundreds of people there. And I was always scared to speak in public, but I had made that breakthrough that day, and I just managed to get through what I wanted to say out on stage without dying on the spot. And people came up to me, and I made some lifelong friends that night. And I just was like, wow, this is really something that lights people up and inspires people. And so that's kind of how I started, and then I went through lots of iterations. I like to think that I was like a Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison tried about 10,000 materials to learn not how to make the light bulb before he was successful. And so I feel like in operating this business, learning to be a CEO, it's not just about the product. Boy, you have to learn so many different things about people, process, and even mostly about humans, right? The machines are easy. It's easy to me to learn how to work the internet and create a website and all that stuff. That stuff is fairly finite, right? It's fairly well defined. It's the human element that is the hard part, right? Motivating employees, and not just motivating them to do what you want them to do. That's level one. Motivating them in a way that makes them want to do the greatest work they've ever done, to feel great to show up at work, to feel emotionally connected. We're a completely virtual team from before the pandemic, and to find a way to be vulnerable and be the kind of leader that gets them to invest in each other and crawl over broken glass for each other when they come to work. That's a special kind of workplace. And we have built a culture of love at this company that I think is part of our secret sauce that overcomes any obstacle. And so all of these different things I just began to combine and see, how awesome of a company can I build? How much love can I express to the bureaucrat, to the customer, to my team, in a way that this thing becomes a self-propagating organism that it just feels good to work at. And I think we've cracked this code a little bit. And I'm just thrilled to see my team grow, see my company grow, and see what happens with these customers, thousands of customers now who find these amazingly innovative ways to help other people. That's what gets me out of bed every morning.
Wow. Man, what a taproot of conviction, really. And then you were planted that seed of greatness, right, in Rutgers, and learning about the wall of the wall coming down and the Soviet Union, all that type of stuff, and how it all kind of created itself into, putting yourself in this spot and then creating your own, and then finding the trick of that, right? Or the component of success of that. So let's go a little bit deeper on that side of things. I'm always very curious. All right. So you've had the idea, you put together these things, you're building out the leadership side of your own leadership and then your component of leadership. Where is it that you start to see that focal point of, all right, I've got a business, but what do I do? Am I marketing it to be able to bring in the clientele and prospects, or am I going to my network to share, hey, I've done this idea and I've gotten out two or three examples, and are you letting referrals and those type of things? Because there's different ways of bootstrapping and obviously monetizing this thing for you.
Yeah, boy, that's a great question. And it's a story of like pain and victory. We I couldn't figure out how to I had this thing down. I had done a number of these at this point, and we had a little bit of a process, right? And then a couple of staff members. And then it's like, okay, well, we need to go get more money to come in and be able to support enough people because you need a critical mass of, at least like three people to not be overburdened and be trying to be the janitor, the leader, the marketer, the copywriter, and everything. So I So yeah, I found somebody who was great at Google Ads. And so we started putting up Google Ads, and boy, the sales started coming in, and I mean coming in fast and furious. But I quickly learned, not quick enough, I quickly learned that the things that you need to do to not only obtain your first customers, your first 10 or your first 100 customers, are very different than what you need to do to obtain your next 500, right? Or 1,000. It's the same very much in fulfillment. This is a complex product. There's the incorporation, EIN, bylaws, a number of other documents required, and then the tax exempt status process where 501c3 really is just a tax status, even though it's used interchangeably as a term with nonprofit.
Mhm.
501c3 is a tax status that's bestowed on a nonprofit corporation. That's what makes it tax exempt at the corporate level. That's what makes donations to it tax deductible for your donors. So there's a whole set of processes that have to be done properly and in order. And what I learned quickly was as we sold all these customers on overly extended payment plans, which was not did not work, and as we brought in too many customers for our fulfillment system as it was at that time, these things began to pile up and our whole ability to fulfill collapsed. And so it was great on paper, right? We rapidly ramped up and everything was great. I even raised some money for the company, but we went into absolute crisis because there was no way to build systems and serve the customers and fulfill all at the same time with that limited amount of staff. We tried building software, that was a disaster. So what I learned was, okay, we need to turn down the ads, unfortunately, right? Sometimes it's not good to take money, it's not good to get more customers. And I
Mhm.
spent several years from there doing nothing but building a sustainable and extremely scalable back end, right? A fulfillment system that does not break and that predicts every eventuality that a customer can have. Customers come to us having incorporated, maybe doing it incorrectly, right? They'll come in piecemeal. They'll have an LLC maybe that has the same name that needs to be dissolved because that you can't do an LLC. You have to do a nonprofit corporation. So we would have to dissolve that to get that out of the way to serve them. So there's 100 different, permutations that I could give you of this. But what I learned was we had built a good enough product that we could sustain almost entirely on referrals. I literally turned off a massive ad spend on Google and I served every single one of those customers manually. I absolutely refused. If I had to eat ramen noodles, every single one of those customers was going to be served what they paid for. And that was painful. It took a while, but what I did was I used those as use cases to build the automations and to build the document uh, creation scripts and all these things. And then when we recently, I mean, after many years of building a sustainable backend and living off of referrals and a much smaller ad spend, we built an absolutely, bulletproof backend. It's an assembly line process where most of our competitors use an account manager process. So we're very profitable because these are very predictable steps. And now at the beginning of this year, late last year, we've completely turned our battleship toward marketing and all of it's taking off. Our YouTube is taking off. Insta, I'm being made famous by two 20 somethings I hired from South America who are amazing people. We are growing superheroes out of everyday people who come to us and have the potential. They have that EOS combination of get it, want it, capacity to do it. And then we just grow them as leaders by giving them a playground and helping them to be absolutely their best. And it is working. Now that we've got this scalable back end, we can bring as many units in as we want and serve the customer with the best deliverables on the planet. We give them the love and encouragement they deserve, which no one else in this industry does. And they have the best customer experience, and it shows in our 5-star reviews. So I am having so much fun right now taking something that I built quietly in the background for many years and bringing it to the world.
So there's a lot of insight in that, right? You're that overnight success of multiple years of work. So
Very much.
I think one of the things that I'd like to draw out of you there is the that period of time where you kind of took a step back, lowered the ad spend and realized, all right, if I build the right infrastructure, the right back end, the right support mechanism, right, I'm going to launch. And maybe you didn't have that mindset initially, but what were some of the things that you did? I mean, obviously years, and if your business isn't, obviously producing what it was from a revenue cycle, you had to maybe scale down, be very linear, very, very lean. What was that? What were the things that made you stay on that and not necessarily go raise funds for private investors, for, friends and family and dilute yourself? What made you stick on this scenario? And what were the things that you were doing?
Yeah, I had raised money early in the company, tried to build software. I didn't have any capacity to do that. I ended up having to throw the software in the trash and use Google Forms, which are terrible, right? But what I learned is that tools often can fool us. They can sort of uh, uh, lull us into this sense of, oh, this is the solution, but really process is the solution. Emotional design is a book that I read that was really important. How do you make your customer feel smarter, not dumber, after encountering your form, your opt-in, your app, your delivery system, right? And so what we did was we ended up putting the software aside despite the expenditure and really going, what process would make it feel really easy to customers? And so we strung together some third-party apps at that time that anyone could have used. And I learned about some things like Google Scripts, right, where you can do document automation, and that really helped revolutionize things. I found what I did was I learned a little bit about Lean, and I would put on the whiteboard everything that we could possibly do in the entire company to bring fulfillment to the next level. And then we would try to weight those things. What's going to give us the biggest leverage point? What is the most, and I would talk to people who were fulfilling, and I fulfilled for a long time. My co-founder fulfilled, it was just the two of us for a while, and then she fulfilled for a while, and I did the front end stuff. And we would put the things that were the most impactful at the top of the list, and sort of automate those, right? And get those out of the way, streamline those. And by just consistently doing that, we were able to get things to where it got smoother and smoother. We were able to do more and more customers, in a month or per hour. But, to answer the question, really, I was going through a process in my life of also having maybe some front end success. My life looked good on the outside, just like our company looked great and people bought clicked our ads and bought our service. Um, but in the back end, right, in the fulfillment of my life, things were not as they seemed. I was struggling to operate. I was struggling to be a dad. I was struggling to um, meet my commitments and keep my word and not get burnt out. And I was I was just unhappy inside, and I didn't realize why, because I'm this eternal optimist. I'm like way over there on that scale of super optimistic type of entrepreneur, ENFJ, on the Myers-Briggs. But I had not realized that I had some trauma from early childhood, and from my parenting, from my dad, who also was, abused and really not emotionally supported as a kid. And I had not learned to love myself and take care of myself. So I was expending everything inside to try to do what I thought I needed to do, what I thought I had committed to, what I thought I was, right? My identity that I had created. And the harder I worked, the worse things went for a while. And it literally brought me and my company to my knees. And eventually I lost everything. I was, out of the house, separated from my wife. I had All the money was gone. My car was actually repoed. I mean, I'm riding around on a bicycle, literally going, what happened to my life? Not even wanting to talk to my own staff and just being really isolated. And it caused me to have this moment that I call like the day of wisdom, where I realized that all my cleverness and all my smarts and all my hard work and that scrappiness, the way I was operating, the way I was looking at my life was what got me into this terrible position. So if I tried to apply all those skills to fixing my situation, I would just get right back where I started. And so I literally let everything go, my faith, everything, and lived like a child, kind of like a monk. I had a coach. I called him and I said, I'm in big trouble. I don't know what to do. And he said, just repeat, God loves me unconditionally every day as a mantra, as much as you can, and do just the very next thing. Do the minimum that you can and just take care of yourself. Eat well, sleep a lot, and allow this situation to be. Accept all things. And the day of wisdom was the day I realized that I going about fixing the things in the way I had before was going to, continue to have me in this terrible situation. And I'll tell you what, very shortly after that, the colors came back. The meaning to life came back. I remember being on a walk and just realizing that I needed to just learn how to love and care for myself first. And then the Bible verse struck me that the standard is loving yourself. It's love others as you love yourself, right? The standard isn't loving others. The standard is loving yourself. That's the baseline. You can't love others. You can't do these things in life at a greater level than the love that you have for yourself and the acceptance and the care that you give yourself. And I would pick up a stranger hitchhiking and put them in a hotel room and give them a meal before I would give myself a break for any failure. And I really talked to myself in a way that wasn't very nice. And I didn't even realize this was going on.
Mm.
And since then, that was about 10 years ago to the month. And since then, every single thing that I had thought I lost, that was irretrievably lost, broken, and irreparably harmed, has all come back to me on my own terms, including this business. And literally every day, that's where I have to wake up and start from is I will do absolutely everything I can to serve everyone in my life. But if I'm not taking care of myself, letting go, accepting things as they are, then that really leads to a lonely and really not a successful place. And it's just ironic that going about things in that way leads to this outer success.
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing something so deep and authentic. Off camera, we talked a little bit about this. To you, I had something similar happen about a month ago. I went to something called the Crucible Project, a Christian men's retreat, and man, they have a process and a way that they bring you into that night and the next couple nights of what they teach you, and how powerful it was what you did, what I've done, and what you, Go for Show community, man or woman, right? We're obviously here with a purpose, but sometimes it's so hard to find that way to get back, right? And like you said, love yourself to love others. That's such a true statement. When you're in that flow state, it's because you are loving yourself first and tending to the things that you need. And that's not selfishness. That's being able to then have enough to give back. And then that's where your generosity, right? And how cool is it that it all kind of is intertwined with instant nonprofit and what you've been able to build in the business itself. So that's really, really awesome. I really appreciate that. So I mean, just to kind of keep going on that little bit of that part, any resources or organizations that you were a part of that helped that, just to kind of give them a little bit of a promo? Because obviously you said that you had a mentor slash coach that you went to in this downtime, but then did you also grab onto some resources that you may be able to share on this podcast?
Yeah, I think one of the things was, each person has to go through their on their own path. I've been part of the Christian church. I have used psychedelics and some curated and very carefully orchestrated and defined experiences through some of those tools. I've taken up yoga. And what I realized is that all of these things, Tough Mudder, right? Sports, working out, right? Really putting your body through some things that maybe you're not, don't feel fun at the beginning. These are all ways to die to oneself, but to do it in a controlled manner. So at the end of every yoga session, there's something called shavasana. You are wrung out. It's hot yoga for an hour. You're tired. You're wiped out. You sweat every ounce of liquid in your body out of your body, and then they have you lay on the floor and Shavasana is this moment of peace and quiet at the end. And it literally is a form of dying and then being reborn. You then sit up, thank the teacher and everyone else for the session. Um, and whether it's through the church and understanding that we have to die to ourselves, right, to be reborn, or through a harrowing experience like a Tough Mudder or a sports or even just a daily workout. These are ways of introducing a controlled way, right, to leave the previous person behind and to pick up this new person. And so, if we can do these things ourselves, instead of having them done to us with a cancer scare or a divorce or this life crisis, right? These things that come upon us are wake up calls. And if we can use the small wake up calls or even induce those wake up calls in ourselves through meditation, through prayer, through whatever the faith experience that people have that sort of has this rebirth element to it, then we're sort of putting ourselves through a controlled process instead of letting things get so bad that we have to be forced to change our diet or treat others more nicely, and usually ourselves in the process, etc. So that was the biggest thing that I've learned in all of this, is that all of these modalities are given to us by a source, an intelligence that's much greater than us. And we get to choose how and when we do these things. And if we go ahead and go to the trouble to do those, we're going to be able to be reborn constantly as a new person with new insights, new appreciation for ourselves, our bodies, our relationships, and everything. And I would say that is the number one thing that has come to me in all of these things, because being able to admit something's not working and moving forward, even in work, even in developing these processes for nonprofits to go through the process so smoothly and easily, it requires that tough conversation with that angry customer, and to really care and not just try to make them happy, but to try to learn what was difficult for them. Even if they're irrationally angry, what was it about their experience? Their experience, right? Great marketing is loving others. Great product creation is a way of loving others and really getting out of your own head and understanding what their needs are. And if we could all do that, boy, this world would be such a different place. And that's the
Yeah.
main thing that coach helped me to learn. And I mean, my gosh, we have organizations that are the people that start nonprofits are sacrificing so much often. They pay for these things out of their pocket to start, and sometimes for years. They they go to a mission trip or they go do some service in the community and they realize it lights them up, and then they just go do it, and they're not looking to start a nonprofit most often. They just want to find those feral cats that are being euthanized, a way to get spayed and neutered and find a home, animals, environment. All these things usually are just these acts of service. Hey, I'm angry that my beach is dirty, I'm going to clean it up, and that turns into a thing. And these are all ways that people are very sacrificial in what they do. And then they just need to put some structure around it. And my job is to teach people how this is just another business. It doesn't need to be mysterious and doesn't need to be run by lawyers and accountants who want you to think that everything is so hard. Our job is to help you to step over that threshold and allow you to find that courage in yourself to go ahead and try that thing. And once you try it, if it lights you up, how can I make that easier for you? And then how can we all do this through thousands of nonprofits? And literally, we are changing the trajectory of history. Me and you are changing the trajectory of history right now by having this conversation, by doing doing the things we do to serve other people. That's exciting to me, and that gets me out of bed even on the worst days.
Pumped up. I love it. I love it, dude. You got me jacked. I love that feeling, right? You made me think of two or three different things while you were speaking of the things that I really enjoy and would love to do it from a nonprofit perspective in the marketplace, right? One super simple one is I'm an only child, didn't know my birth father, adopted through name, and I've always believed, kind of like the Girls and Boys Club, but something to the fact that you take any child that's in that scenario and bring them into an environment where that now they open their eyes. Because to me, going to Colombia, I said in my book, and seeing my uncle just live a different life because my mother was clerical, my adoptive father was a steel worker. And so we're, lower middle class, whatever. But seeing the perspective of what could be and potential in life is such a burning desire for me because I feel like people die in a bad way and give up, right? Like they
Yeah.
go, oh, well, that's never going to happen for me. I'm never
Mhm.
going to be rich. I'm never going to be able to drive a nice car. I'm never going to be able to live in a good neighborhood. My kids are never going to be able to go to private school, blah, 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 whatever the never is. And how cool is it that through your organization, you're allowing nevers become sometimes and now forevers, right? To be able to do that stuff. So, what an interesting plot today in this conversation. Different than some of my other GoCO podcasts and interviews, but so appreciative that you just took us through this journey. So, to go a little bit more into the business side of things, just because we do want to learn a little bit more about kind of the systems and process that you had. Um, from a leadership perspective, and you're building the business, right? You had this downtime in your business and in your personal life. You went from the ashes to a phoenix and revived yourself and rebranded and kind of got yourself back. What were some of the things that you then had to do with some of those people that were in your organization, kind of seeing you go through this process, just for people that, are thinking like, hey, my business is 10, 15, 20, 30 years, and I don't know how to allow my people from a leadership perspective to also come on this journey with me to build a bigger and better, institution.
Yeah, for sure. It's really important, I think, to approach this from like a level of humility, and it's scary. When even today, even I can give you examples this week. I won't, but I'm going through some things this week after 10 years of peeling this onion back and learning about myself and the world around me and how we manifest things, right? Really directly. And so when we go to make a change in ourselves, in our leadership style, or in the way we show up, um, when we go to make a change there, the and we start making the moves to make those changes, the entire world seems to conspire against you sometimes, right? Your family, your friends, your colleagues, they have an unwritten contract with you that says this is the role that you play, this is how you operate, and you're not. It's like in politics, they call it the Overton window. What is possible is inside the Overton window. And until we talk about how money printing is a real thing and inflationary cycles are a real thing, that was not inside the Overton window 10 years ago. The Overton window had to move for that to be something that would be accepted in the public consciousness. It's very much like that in our own lives. So as we start to move this Overton window of our own paradigms and our own operating system, and we start pushing against the edge of that thing, that's what moves it, right? It takes vulnerability. You have to be brave, and you have to be ready to be kicked in the teeth a little bit, because not even your own mother will be ready to look at you in a different way, because they have a certain, you're typecast, right? You've played Tom Cruise. You're Tom Cruise. You've played the good guy too many times, and everybody's going, there's no way he's going to be able to play the bad guy. But boy, did he pull that off, right? It's just like that in our own lives. We have to really be brave and be willing to be rejected in a business maybe that we've been doing for 10, 15, 20 years in order to make that change. But the rewards are so worth it, because you're going to find that those aren't necessarily, you have to be okay with letting go of not only your old self, but people that maybe aren't going to vibe with that, right? Or maybe some things are going to happen, and a contract completely unrelated is going to come and say, well, we don't want to do business with you if you're going to take this stand on some issue that you decide to talk about, or whatever it is, right? Whatever that change is. Lots of environmental things come in and push against you doing that. And that's kind of how you know you're on the right path. And so that's a really important thing to be able to sit down and go, what are my deeper values? And how do I connect those deeper values to actions in my life that I can take to live more authentically? And suddenly it's like you can breathe more, and we put ourselves in boxes, and then the oxygen gets a little thin, and then we wonder what's going on. And it's because we need to open up that box and go into a new wineskin you've heard of, right? So that is a really important thing to understand. And if you can consciously do this, again, it's like kind of self-induced metamorphosis through challenging your body, your mind, and spirit. It's the same thing here. You can do that in a way that's intentional by going through a process. I've gone to retreats, many retreats, and looked at who am I and who do I really want to be? And are my actions matching that? Do my relationships match that? And if you can intentionally move that window, at least you know why you're getting kicked in the teeth, or why maybe some things go sideways in life, and you can go, okay, this is just a natural, reaction of this situation, because I'm stepping outside of this box. If you do it in a way that's unintentional, you might be more lashing out at people, or refusing to allow them to reject you and to just not accept this new way of operating. But if you can be conscious about it, then you go, oh, it's almost validation, where otherwise it would feel like rejection, or it would feel like you're going in the wrong direction. And so it's all about intentionally putting ourselves through. Reading your book, for example, and seeing the examples that you gave in there of change that you've been through, change others have been through, gives us the inspiration to go, you know what, that feels really good, and I want to do that.
I love it. Look, I'm really amazed. I wish we had like 3 hours together, because I think there's so much more that you're talking about, right? And the snippets that you've already given, I know that from a clips perspective, we're gonna showcase some of these things that you've said. So, and it really works in nonprofit, for profit, your life. We talk about in the book, and I appreciate you mentioning it. Faith, family, fitness, finance, and fun, right? And if you take those 5 F's and, like you said, rebuild, earlier when you were talking about kind of you know, kind of constructing yourself, I thought about, hey, there's some gurus out there, right? And people that do some great work about 1% better every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that same philosophy of what can I do? What can I bring back down to build back up? What can I build in the muscle to tear down to put, to build back up? So I love it. I love it. So all right. So look, I wish we had more time, but we like to end our interviews with CEO. So client experience, E is for engagement, and O is for operational excellence. So from a client experience perspective of Instant Nonprofits, what would you say is the value proposition when someone comes to Instant Nonprofits, and now that you've built this 10-year business, what should they expect from a client journey perspective?
What they should expect is to be completely contextualized from the beginning. We tell you, for example, we have a great gift for your listeners. If you go to instantnonprofit.com/podcast, you're going to get an absolutely free, zero harassment startup kit that tells you the 10 things that you need to know if you're thinking about or even exploring what is a nonprofit, what does it take to get started, and can this be an outlet for me to do some things in my life? And so it's absolutely free. Just go to instantnonprofit.com/podcast, and it's a free gift of ours. It's got videos. It's got actually some workshop sessions. What would my name be of my nonprofit? How would I boil down my mission? All of those kinds of things. And then what are the practical steps? And so by providing people context, no one does anything that they can't picture themselves doing. And so what we try to do is draw that picture for people and say, this is what this would be like to go through from, forms and things like that. Our average customer gets through the entire process in less than 20 minutes of work. This is unheard of. Um, and that work is made so easy because we show people on a video, right? This is what the form looks like. This is what you do. If you need help, this is where you reach out. So they don't feel like they're going into something blind because, as I said, you want people to feel dumber, I'm smarter and not dumber in any one of your processes, right? And then we also have a beautiful customer portal that we launched that was my 10-year dream that gives everybody the entire context of the experience. We say what we just did for you, what we're doing right now, what you can do for yourself that we can't do for you, like go open your bank account or have your first board meeting, and then what we're doing next. And with those four things, people go, ah, I see. I don't have to worry or fear or try to remember what happened or try to find in my email some document. Everything is right there in context for them. And that makes people feel comfortable and safe to take the next step. They
Mm.
also know that we're going to not present them with problems and questions that they can maybe think about later. There's some, I could give you a 1,000-page book on anything from building a house to having a baby to starting a nonprofit. And if you had to learn everything in that book prior to starting, you would nobody would have a baby for sure if they knew exactly all of the things, right? So what we do is we say, hey, there's lots of things over here that we're going to share with you, but right now this is the only thing you need to do. And so we have a beautiful step-by-step process for customers to go through from A to Z, whether it's learning about starting a nonprofit or actually doing it. And then we let them know what they can do for themselves and empower them. So instead of calling our customer service every 5 minutes about their IRS approval, which, we're not in control of the IRS, or I would be lowering your taxes right now. Um, Instead of doing that, they can go raise some money with some very basic instructions. They can, as a matter of fact, they can raise money before the IRS approves them. Most people don't know that. As soon as we incorporate you, you can start raising money, including paying yourself back for the startup costs, right? Completely legal, completely acceptable. Giving people that kind of empowering information first is way more important than some obscure form that they need to file in 2 years, which we will certainly help them do later. So that's kind of the biggest thing I could share is sharing the context and helping people feel comfortable with whatever level of knowledge and understanding they have now, and understanding that we're going to just keep them apprised the entire way.
I love it. I love it. So E is for engagement, right? And I always ask every one of my guests, what is it that differentiates you when you engage with your vendors, your employees, your clients? What do you like to do? Do you like to do retreats? Are you a dinner or breakfast guy? Like, do you like to do sporting events, right? How is it that people should expect to engage with Christian, right? And at Instant Nonprofits, founder, CEO of a company. What do you do that's unique?
One of the things I love to do things in the outdoors, and I've sort of at my advanced age discovered festivals. So what we're starting to do is post when we're going to be, in a city or in a festival. I travel around. I'll interview customers on our new podcast called Iconic Impact. And so what we want to do is just allow people to show up and share their experience. And we are putting together some events, but I love to do things in the beautiful outdoors, right? Because I find that when people stop thinking about what they're trying to do, new ideas can emerge and spring up. It's kind of like when you're in the shower and that idea comes to you, or you're on a hike and you go, whoa, I just realized this big thing that I've been overlooking at work. And so I like to do things out in nature and invite people to join me for mountain biking. I've taken up skydiving. I dirt bike. I've learned to snowboard at the cost of a broken wrist in the past couple of years. So those are my favorite things to do. But we have a virtual team at Instant Nonprofit. We've never met. We've been virtual since before the pandemic. And we have somebody from Pakistan who's been here, started as a VA, and now is running an entire department and has gone through her PhD. We're all going up to Boston to see her. So I would love to have a little event up there. We have a lot of customers up there. And so that would be something really meaningful to me, because to set eyes on someone that you've had to love through the Zoom window is going to be really exciting.
No, that's awesome. Well, I appreciate that nature side. I'd never done this before, but went clay shooting, and
Oh,
with
that's
some,
so much fun.
it was so much fun. It was like the country club of clay shooting, like a golf course. They had 18 different areas to shoot from, and then at the end we did more of a competitive thing. It was kind of in an area where all the 34 guests shot 8 of us, and like let's say you'd shoot, it would go out, and if you missed, the next person, if they hit the person was out. So it's kind of like you hit it and you're out. And I got runner up after not really having ever shot a shotgun, always done 9 millimeters in my own handguns that I own. But it's interesting. It was a cool experience and so different at a place called it's a wildlife place. They actually do most of the research you ever see on National Geographic stuff for like foxes and pheasants and stuff. McGraw Wildlife. And the guy started either like a paper, Chicago Tribune or something. Became really wealthy, but bought like 1,100 acres, and he just has this incredible place. There's only 1,000 members. It's just really, really cool stuff. So, and I've never been an outdoorsy guy, but that's a really cool experience and cool to hear that you use that to be able to engage, right, with your family, friends, and clients and associates. So, all right, last one is operational excellence. Typically, we talk about throughout the conversation, hey, what tools are you using? Have you become AI centric the last 6 to 12, 18 months? Have you always been using, some sort of CRM? What are some of the unique tools, two or three of them, just to highlight kind of what Instant Nonprofit uses as tools to flow your business?
One of the things we've done, and AI is helping so much for people to, we've implemented EOS on our own on the way to getting an operator, right? More of a someday COO, but somebody who can be a player coach and take all those operational things and project manage and things like that. So we decided to self-implement EOS because an EOS implementer can be, $20 to $50,000. And um, what we did was we used ChatGPT, which knows EOS really well, to help us break that system down into its components and at least get us onto a meeting cadence, and install all of those things where we have KPIs and reporting and all those things that touch on all areas of the business. So that's been super helpful. We were, like I said, we were virtual before the pandemic. We started using automations out of literally self-preservation when we had all those customers and we didn't have a system to serve them. And then we started using AI fairly early, just playing around with it. But the thing that I'm finding most wonderful about ChatGPT, because there's a million videos your listeners can go out and find out how to hack spreadsheets or do this data analysis or do copywriting or whatever. But it's the human ways to use AI that are really important. I'm going to leave you with this one. We at our company, we record every meeting, right? Lots of people have Fathom or they have Otter or whatever, and that's just riding shotgun on all these different meetings. And what I
Mhm.
started to do was realize that people, I don't even know what I want sometimes. People ask me what I want out of life, and I need to go like into the woods for 2 days and go, okay, well, kind of have a lot of things that I want, but what are the deeper things? What are my deeper motivators? And what I learned is that you can take these meeting conversations, like with you and me right now, you can actually take that transcript and run it through a set of prompts to analyze what is not being said. What lights that staff member up, right? What causes them the most pain? What do they like least about the job? Where does their energy level kind of get, drawn down versus built up?
Hmm.
And you can actually look at the subtext of conversations because chances are you're meeting with your staff again and again and again over a series of months. It's hard for you to retain all that data, but ChatGPT can take dozens of transcripts from months and start to look at what are the patterns and what are the recurring themes that that person might not be saying, hey, I need this support, or this would make me really happy, or I'm starting to have some family breakdown and I could use some time off. They might not want to tell you that. But what if you could extract that from the subtext by using AI? And I've started to do that, and it yields some really interesting results. It also helps me see my blind spots. Where am I repeating myself? Or where am I saying that I want to do something across different meetings, right? Like provide a platform for people's voice to be heard, maybe, but I'm not doing it, right? And I keep bringing it up month after month. That must mean it's not getting done. So, how can I take an hour, grab all these transcripts, and then find out, even in my own conversations, what can I do and how could I serve better? And what are those things, those tropes, and those blind spots that I have in my leadership that I could improve? And it is scary how good ChatGPT is, like a therapist, to tell you how you could improve your own leadership and serve people better by looking at your actual conversations and not what you think you know.
Interesting, interesting. No, yeah, literally the guest that just earlier today we had on talked about the chat bot, and I've actually been using the voice part of chat,
Oh yeah.
see Claude and stuff like that, because a guest a few months ago told me, hey, if you want to have a little secret, talk to your AI, right? Like start to develop that relationship where there's an understanding of kind of the way you think and how you want it to decipher, and then it'll pick up on clues of something that you're working through, a workflow or some sort of situation in the business, right? So that's awesome stuff. So we'll leave everybody with where to get a hold of you, Christian. What's the best way to kind of connect with you or with some of your team so that they can, if they're interested in building their own new nonprofit, and they can engage with obviously Instant Nonprofits.
Yeah, as far as connecting with me, and I would love to hear people's ideas. I'd love to, if somebody has something beautiful to bring to the world, an idea, a movement, or a person that is disrupting things in a way that makes the world a better place, I'd love to have them as a guest on my podcast. I'd love to learn more about books and things that people are learning from. They can share that directly with me on any social. Just look up Christian Lafleur, and my dad was the only person with my name other than I think a guy in France. So you should be able to find me there, Christian Lafleur. But for the company to maybe you have an idea, but you don't know where it's going to go, and or you haven't really vetted it, you haven't talked to anybody. You can absolutely have a safe conversation, no pressure, with one of our people. If you go to instantnonprofit.com, book a call. It's right on the top of the website. You can, like I said, learn more through our startup kit, and you can find us at Instant Nonprofit on any of the socials, Insta, LinkedIn, etc. And we want to hear about your ideas. We want to hear what we could do better. What are the questions that you have that we can answer to help you understand this is only going to be one of the outlets, perhaps. A nonprofit might be one of many outlets, expressions of people wanting to do something great in the world, from having a family to their exercise routine, whatever. A nonprofit is just another expression of something great, and we want to help people understand whether it's right for them, whether the timing's right, etc. And if it's something that's good for them, we're going to certainly make it a lot easier. And a lot of times people run these alongside of their for-profit business, and they use these nonprofits to enhance their for-profit business, which is fine. If you do roofing and you want to help folks who are, in poverty and have a leaky roof, you can name the nonprofit similar to your for-profit, and people will then understand that you're a good corporate citizen, you're a good citizen of the community, and that they'll choose to do business with your business because you care and because they understand your care. And didn't we start out this whole conversation earlier before we got on by saying people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And what a nonprofit is just one of the many ways that we can share with people in the world that we do care and that it's not all bad. Turn off the news, get out in the world and go help somebody, and you'll feel great at the end of the day.
Couldn't have ended it better than that, except for get out in nature also, follow Christian's lead. It's such a beautiful thing to admire even a leaf that's flowing on a tree just in the autumn day because it's about to fall and it's lost its nutrients and now it's falling and then the rebirth in spring. Really, really awesome stuff. So thank you so much, Christian, for being a part of the GoFCO channel. By the way, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, subscribe now. Keep on growing this community. Go
Do
out
it
and
now.
Thank you. Go out and check out my book, The 4A Formula, Untangle Any Challenge and Think Like a CEO. There's bonus chapters in there where we talk to great people like Christian, and they've added to that book. And then my own experiences of being an entrepreneur, and an only child and all that good stuff. So thank you so much, Christian, for being part of this journey. And thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing such a insightful insight. I can't wait for the episode to come out and those 20 minutes of just sharing some impactful things that have not only helped your own business, but your personal life grow and be so much better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. I can't wait to shoot clays with you someday, brother.